taxi strike in the Western Cape has forced some facilities, including hospitals, to close. In fact, staff have experienced harassment and sporadic attacks from those who are part of this industrial action. The taxi strike was triggered by the City of Cape Town's new bylaws, we're told, surrounding the roadworthiness specifically of taxis. Let's continue with our coverage of the story and bring in Ricardo Mackenzie. He's the MEC for Mobility in the Western Cape and joins us now via our video link. MEC Mackenzie, it's lovely to have you on the program. Thanks so much indeed for making time. News coming in just a few minutes ago that one of the City of Cape Town's law enforcement officers has been shot and killed during patrols that are being carried out during the strike. Authorities are still trying to, pin down the motive for the shooting, but I wonder to what extent that changes the way you respond to the strike itself.
It does, and thank you for having me this afternoon. In fact, late last night we were in discussions with the Santaco leadership and various stakeholders to bring about an end to the strike, and right now there's a meeting taking place with Santaco and their respective chairpersons in trying to bring an end to the strike on the proposals that we've made. Sadly, after the negotiations last night, we've received information that one of our lead officers was gunned down in Nyanga, and he sadly passed away. It's horrible. It's obviously it impact on the negotiations, and we hope that we can still find a solution today to this taxi strike problem, because that while we were negotiating an end to the taxi strike, one of our lead officers was killed last night in duty.
Yeah, and we're told it was in a drive-by shooting. Are you linking this unequivocally to the strike itself?
We don't have information at this point, but SAPS is investigating this matter as we speak, obviously. But at this moment, we can't say whether it was linked or not to this particular strike. But he was killed while dropping off some of his colleagues in Nyanga, which has been one of the hotspots during this taxi strike. But I can't say for fact at this moment it is linked to the strike now.
It's understandably a very delicate moment, people need to be careful what they say, what they do, lest we push things over the edge. But I wonder what you can tell us about at least the nature of these consultative talks that you've just mentioned are underway.
Yeah, the nature of these consultative talks that we had until late last night is to bring an end to this taxi strike. The proposals that we've made to Santaco leadership last night, they have taken to their members. They have been meeting since 11 o'clock. This morning, I'm eagerly waiting the outcomes of those meetings. They should be done by 1 o'clock. And they might agree to the proposals, they might not agree. As you can imagine, it is a waiting game for us. It's a tense period, and I sincerely hope that the members of Santaco can accept our proposal, because we want to bring an end to this. We want to bring things to normality. We want commuters to move around freely. It's a new week starting in 2 days, Monday. They have medicine that must get to clinics. People want to get to work, and people are feeling held hostage at the moment by the taxi strike. So it is a delicate situation, but we're working hard to find a resolution to this problem.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I suppose we'll continue counting the cost of the strike itself. Cars being torched, sometimes buses, trucks, private vehicles being stoned in some instances. Have we come to a point of quantifying the losses there? Or is that a bit too early of a question to ask for now?
It is too early, but it is a massive cost. Not only the cost to commuters, small businesses, big businesses, people that had to go to work, children that had to go to school. It is a massive cost to the economy of the city and to the country, obviously. The damage to private individuals, people arriving late at work, mothers, single mothers having to pick their kids up. The cost is probably unquantifiable in that context. But there is a massive economic cost to it, but that will only be quantified once everything is settled down and we're able to assess these vehicles, assess all the damage that's been caused by this taxi strike.
Yeah, and I suppose for people who are involved in this, and by that I mean those affected by the strike, as well as for those watching from the outside, there's going to be a lot of reflection around how we got here. So help us understand, MEC, the kind of series of events that led to the strike. For one, was there any kind of consultation with the industry before these new bylaws were introduced?
Well, this is the sad part about it, because I can actually speak, because I chaired the taxi task team. I'm the chairperson of that taxi task team. And we've been working for the last 4 months to resolve the concerns by Santaco and the minibus taxi industry. It was a shock to us when we received a letter to say they were withdrawing from the task team. And subsequently, they made a decision to go on strike. So we had meetings where they were part of these meetings, where the matters were discussed and raised. And suddenly, out of the blue, we received a letter to say they were withdrawing from the task team. We've tried to meet with them via a mediator and say, let's get back to the negotiation table. And the meeting that resulted in the strike was sadly and horribly severely politicized. We saw the individuals that was there. There was political parties at these meetings where they decided on the strike, which is bizarre and sad in the minibus taxi industry that political parties go to a meeting to decide on a strike affecting the minibus taxi industry. It is the most bizarre thing. But right now we're just trying to get them back at the table. They did came back last night. We had a meeting until late last night in trying to resolve the issue. Those matters are now on the table. It's at their doorstep. They need to make the decision at the meeting they're having right now. But we will reflect again when we meet again in the next week or two. First, stop the strike, get back on the road. The commuters must travel in an environment that are safe. They can't travel in an environment where they're being intimidated and stones being thrown at buses. There are some of the conditions attached to these negotiations. And then we need to reflect. How did we end up that way in a process where they were part of?
Yeah. I wonder what reasons they provided for that withdrawal, MEC, from this task team.
The reasons they provided was on the empowerments, and that's what we spent a lot of time with last night, on the empowerments and the conditions of the empowerment. And those are some of the things that we talked about last night. We agreed to start looking at those issues, and those are the list of issues that we agreed to last night. They taking to their members today, and they will give us an outcome after 1 o'clock. I see we now past 12 almost, after 1 o'clock, if they accept those conditions so that people can get to work.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned that you saw, political figures getting involved. Are you supposing that there's some kind of political interference that got us here?
It is not usual where owners of a business who decide to go and strike or not get opposition parties to sit in on those meetings. It is not normal in any way society. It normally, when the minibus taxi decide on matters, they themselves decide on the matter. It was, when I saw the footage and the pictures coming out of these meetings, it was actually broadcast live, I think on your channel as well, where political leaders spoke about the minibus taxi industry and agreeing to go on the strike. But those are matters that I don't want to discuss now because emotions has calmed down. We've put the deals on the table last night. We want to finalize it, and we want to get the minibus taxi industry functioning and get to work. But what happened last week Thursday morning, it has to be discussed at some forum. Yeah. Why did political parties go to a forum where owners of minibus taxi industry have to decide on a strike or not? That needs to be discussed. We can't just leave it off the table. I'm sorry.
Sure. I mean, with the benefit of hindsight, do you agree that perhaps it would have been a bit more prudent to wait for there to be some kind of concession around these new bylaws before they're being enforced? Because, as you've mentioned, the city has equally been taken aback by the decision to go on strike.
Yeah, let me just be very clear. None of these vehicles were, that is the confusion that is, I don't know how it came in the miscommunication. None of these vehicles were impounded by the bylaw. In fact, last night, officials from the National Department of Transport were also in that meeting. The vehicles are being impounded under the NLTA, the National Land Transport Act and the National Road Traffic Act. There's a massive miscommunication around official vehicles being impounded by the bylaw. Not one vehicle has been impounded by the City of Cape Town under the new bylaw.
Sure. This is clearly a miscommunication that got to the industry itself, because part of what they're telling the media is that it's as a result of these bylaws.
That's exactly what we communicated also last night in this meeting. But like I said, we want first things to stabilize, peace, people must get to work, the violence must stop, then we can get to the technicalities of the matter. Right now it's important that people must get to work, businesses, individuals, ambulances, medicines must be dropped off in communities without intimidation, and then we'll sit down and go through these technicalities and the small matters where there's been massive miscommunication around. But the important things for us right now is taxis must start working, people must get to work, and the communities must not be intimidated by anyone who's got more than two people in the car. Those are critical issues for us right now, so things can return to normality.
Yeah, I think it's priorities that many people will agree with. However, MEC, I wonder if, as a city, you're starting to think of contingency plans if the strike does continue past, I think it's next week Thursday is the date that Santako put on the table.
Yes, we have contingency plans in place. Our buses, My City and Golden Arrow, currently running at 90%. Today we receive hourly updates. They have additional fleets available. There is contingency plans again being made for Monday. But as you can imagine, it is difficult. There are 16,000 minibus taxis in the Western Cape. It is difficult to find a replacement for them at such short notice.
Right, MEC for Mobility in the Western Cape, Ricardo Mackenzie, thanks very much indeed for your time. Once again, it is a delicate moment. Some of those discussions are taking place as you and I speak, so hopefully you'll have a much more of a positive report back for us on the back of 1 o'clock is the time I think you mentioned, announcing possibly the end of what's going on in Cape Town. Ricardo Mackenzie, once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.